And welcome into the Tuesday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Hope everybody's off to a wonderful start to their day today. Joe Rexrode, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing all right. Just ready for Snowmageddon. Going to go to the grocery store after this, get about $1,200 worth of supplies. About 8 gallons of milk, 10 loaves of bread. What else do we need?
I guarantee you, if you walk into any grocery store today, the bread and milk will be on a limited display, which is always hilarious to me. It's like, guys, you'd be snowed in for maybe a day, maybe two.
Yeah.
And we got to just load up on bread and milk.
How many sandwiches? Like, I mean, if you get that much, you better make a lot of French toast, right? Dip the milk in the egg and dip the bread in the egg and the milk.
French toast,
you know what I'm saying,
is underrated anyway. It probably needs to be more French toast just in life.
I would agree.
Yeah, like I don't know why it's like, well, we must get bread and milk. Let's go get it.
Right.
And it's all gone.
Yeah, why are those the things that you have to have? I'm having a flashback now to COVID and no toilet paper anywhere.
Yeah.
Here's some coarse brown paper towels that you used to get in school. Guess we'll use that, eh?
Just go find a leaf outside off a tree. You'll be fine.
Just kind of shower it out there.
Geezer, how we doing? What's going on?
What's up, brother?
Are you taking up all the bread and milk today? You going grocery shopping?
No, I used to work at a grocery store, and I can understand where the demand comes from and having to constantly go stock it up.
You used to do what at a grocery store?
I used to stock shelves.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My first job was bagging at a commissary, so same thing. Grocery
very
store.
nice.
Yeah. All tips.
My first job was making pizza, so that's what I did.
Wow.
A lot of pizza.
That's a good one.
Making that dough.
Making that dough. Yeah, very nicely done. Very nicely done. We got a lot to get into on the program today. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean will be with us at 7:30. There is a smorgasbord of options and things that we will get into with Gentry Estes. So looking forward to that coming up later in the program. We'll discuss another Stanley potentially coming to Nashville later this hour as well. So we'll get into that. The more Stanleys we can have around here, I think the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, and it's Stanley kind of sounds like you even more than just the last name.
Does.
Yeah,
kind of does. In the 7 o'clock hour, we'll get into a little Vanderbilt talk. I don't know if you noticed, pretty good run of success for Vanderbilt athletics so far in the last calendar year. How has it happened? Is it sustainable? We'll get into that a little bit later in the program as well. Taking your thoughts in the meantime, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So, John, I got to thinking about it yesterday. You know, we talked about the U.S.-Canada Saturday night matinee or Saturday night rumble that they had, that USA won, and now we're going to get the rematch on Thursday, U.S. and Canada in the final of the Four Nations, which I'm very much looking forward to. So I guess we'll see how healthy everybody is at that point. You got Charlie McAvoy from USA apparently in the hospital right now, which we'll see what happens on that. Matthew Tkachuk was hurt last night. Brady Tkachuk got hurt last night. So the bodies are starting to drop a little bit for Team USA. We'll see what that looks like on Thursday. But
good thing nobody went to the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom line is it was a great game Saturday night, one of the better hockey games that I've ever seen played. And it got me thinking, like, what is the best game that you've ever seen played? Could be on TV, could be in person, not necessarily something that you've had to be there and experience live and in person, but the best game that you can remember watching. Is there anything in particular, Joe, that stands out to you in that area?
I mean, I saw this on the grid. I'm like, that's a great idea, but like, I'm old and I've been doing this a long time. Like, I mean, one of the things, obviously, I think about things I've seen in person. I've talked about this before, but the women's hockey gold medal game in Korea between U.S. and Canada was one of the great experiences of my life. And you know, the shootout and what the heck did she call that shot? Oops, I did it again.
Yeah.
I mean, but like the arena, you know, some of that is like, to me, it's enhanced when you're there, like the arena. That was an incredible, you know, I mean, it's just like absolute. It's like, it's got to be desperation. So that's for a gold medal, which is, I think that just or for a championship.
The stakes matter, I think.
Yeah, I think the stakes matter, you know. But man, I mean, there's some Preds games that, like, I think of Game 3 against Chicago.
Yeah.
In 17.
Uh-huh.
Which I believe was the game. Well, that was the game. I think Forsberg title. That was an insane. Yeah, that was like Chicago last stand, and they put everything into it. I mean, that game stands out.
That's Fiala game winner in overtime.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. Shoot, I mean, the year before, those ridiculous multiple overtime. So I can get into like each thing and go through it. I basically I've done a poor job here. My brain has a lot of stuff in it. Seen some incredible college basketball games. I mean, I got to see the Villanova UNC championship game, which again, Charles Robinson had video of me when UNC tied it on the ridiculous shit. If you remember that,
Oh yeah,
they tied it some stupid shot, and Charles was right behind me on press row, and I was like, "This." And he went around Twitter, and people were like, "No cheering in the press." I'm like, "I wasn't cheering." I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think you and Charles Barkley had a similar reaction when that was all going down.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, man,
two known legends,
that's
Charles Barkley and Joe Rexrode.
Similar body types. But so I mean those come to mind, but like I'm thinking of some of the college football games I've seen. Like, you know, I'm old and I wish I had but the first thing that came to mind was the gold medal game.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, part of it is like it's like the arena and it's half Canadians and half Americans and everybody got along, didn't boo their anthems, by the way.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was cool. That one comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few to me, like in hockey, you know, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. 2010 gold medal game between U.S. and Canada was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right up there. I would say the Rose Bowl between USC and Texas with Vince Young is right up near the top of best games
That's a great
I've ever
call.
watched. I would say, I mean, you're probably not going to like this one, but Game 7 of the Cavs and the Warriors in 2016, right up there with one of the great games I've watched. Like, it was awesome. Like, there's, I think, a ton that you can choose from there. Like, for selfish reasons, as a Miami Heat fan, like the 2013 Ray Allen shot where they went back and tied it in Game 6 and then ultimately won Game 7. But the Game 6 part of that was awesome. Like, there's a few I could choose from. I think if I had to nail down one, I do think it's USC and Texas in the national title game. It's hard to top that one.
That's a great call, man. That was an unbelievable game. Yeah. Yeah, you know, the 2016 thing. So, quick story on that. We were visiting my mom in Virginia, but we went out to watch Game 7, and Brennan was, let's see, how old would he have been? Almost 9, and he was the most diehard Warriors fan. And Brennan almost got into a bar fight with some like grown men Cavs fans. Then LeBron got hurt. Brennan's like, yes. And I'm like, you can't cheer for someone getting hurt.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Yeah. But yeah, that was, what a heartbreaker.
I'll throw another one your way. And this, again, is totally personal. Although the game itself, you can make an argument for it being up there. I mean, 2022, Tennessee, Alabama is pretty darn good. It is pretty good. You were in there for that one.
Incredible. No question. This is the problem is like, yes, that, but I think like, and that one high stakes for sure. So, but I think the USC Texas is such a great call because, you know, obviously,
championship.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you remember those USC teams, you didn't feel like anyone could ever stop them.
Right.
And Texas stopped them a couple times by the skin of their teeth, you know, but obviously Vince Young, that's one of the great performances too. You know, talk about, and of course, people here, that's the type of performance that convinces someone that they should invest a lot in you. You know?
And it looked like it was going to work out really well for about 2 years. And then that's about it.
Yeah, man. I was sure that one was, and you know, the Titans would have been on an off, taking this off topic on a side note, Titans would have been like such a, I think, like popular team in the NFL if he would have.
I agree.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like the attention on the
Just fun
Titans
to watch,
during the early Vince Young era, I think was as high as at any time in the franchise history. It would just, and that's for me in Michigan at the time.
I agree.
Every week it was like, okay, what's this guy going to do?
Right.
You know,
especially with the way like he won some of those games early in his career. Like just, I mean, the overtime touchdown run against the Texans or like the drive against Arizona or the drive against the Giants. Like he had some pretty for a guy that wasn't around that long, he had some pretty big moments. Like it was pretty fun to watch.
He's an all-time what if, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if he again from everything I've heard, if he put everything into it and was totally locked in to be great, I think he would have been.
I mean, I was thinking about this exercise. You know, I've listed some college games, an NBA game, hockey game, like the NFL. Like, what's the best NFL game of all time? Because I could make the argument like the best NFL game that I've watched was probably Buffalo and Kansas City in the
Yeah.
playoffs a couple of years ago, and when it was the divisional round. So it's not like there was a Super Bowl on the line or anything. I mean, look, Titans Rams pretty good too in the Super Bowl.
Titans Rams, but yes, that one I think would have to be on list. I mean, I think the Patriots Eagles Super Bowl, even though it wasn't like, I don't remember exactly the end. I don't think it came down to like some incredible drama at the end, but the game itself was just thrilling. It was just, it was nonstop offense on both sides, and I'm like, Nick Foles just can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Okay, Doug Peterson going on all the fourth down. I mean, that one comes to mind. Well, there's a few Super Bowls that I think a championship game qualifies as high enough stakes,
Yeah,
though.
I would agree.
It was insane that the way that game ended. Chiefs, Bills, the Tyreek Hill long TD, I mean, that one's up there.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on the best game you've ever seen, plus some NFL headlines to get to coming up next. Could we see some wide receiver movement this offseason in the National Football League? And what does it mean for the Titans? We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home in the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines. We're all over the place on our best games we've ever seen on the text line.
Yeah, a lot of good submissions, a lot of good ones. You know, you mentioned the Oshie game yesterday.
Yep.
Great one, the drive, Elway against the Browns. Man, I was a huge Elway fan, and that was amazing. And I know that Mike Vrabel cried that day. So, not saying I enjoy that. You know, Vrabel claims he might come on the show soon. I mean, I'm just saying.
Hey,
he's not saying no.
He's always
probably
welcome.
not.
He's always welcome on the program.
That's a good one. Drew with the Iron Bowl. I had 24-0 Bama. And Cam brings it back. That was an insane game. I mean, there's so many.
Kick six. That's the ending of a game. The entire game wasn't like great.
Yeah.
It's a great ending.
You do have to distinguish that. It's like constant great. Like again, that you know, like Stanley Cup playoffs hard to top, you know, when you got two desperate teams. And like I think I like that Preds game against Chicago when it was 2-0 Preds, and you're like, you know, the Blackhawks is basically their dynasty is on the line tonight, you know. But yes, then you have the incredible endings, which sometimes can be capping a whatever game.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the more I got to thinking about this, I've seen a lot of great games. Hopefully see a lot more in the future. A lot of great games that have been seen out there.
A lot of great games. But, I mean, I'm more interested in watching people stretch here coming up pretty soon and talk. Pretty awesome.
Well, good for you. We're only a few weeks away from that opportunity for you. And it's right up the road in Indianapolis.
I think it's like a week.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think.
Weekish, yeah.
I think a week from now, I know that they will be there. And then maybe the interviews players probably start like a week from tomorrow or something like that. Yeah. So get ready, everybody. Then they start running and stretching.
Shorts on.
And yeah.
You're going to bench press. It's going to be awesome.
I mean, why watch, actual sports games? Get into that stuff.
So speaking of the NFL, it's going to be, I think, interesting to monitor what the wide receiver market looks like this offseason. And we've talked about the T. Higgins part of this. He's a straight up free agent at the moment. What's Cincinnati going to decide to do? Could they tag him again? Does he get the free agency? Do they come to a long-term deal?
There is a report, right, on him being tagged.
I have not seen that.
I thought. I could be wrong. I'll make sure.
Okay.
I thought somebody reported that.
Well, that could be. In the meantime, Bill Barnwell came out with a piece yesterday at ESPN.com. And it was kind of going through some of the trade candidates and cut candidates this offseason around the league. A lot of wide receivers on the list, starting with Tyreek Hill down in Miami. Now, if you remember the way the season ended for Tyreek Hill, they played, I think it was week 18 against the Jets. He refused to go in the game in the fourth quarter. And then after the game was over, he was interviewed and was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Now, he has since, and he was part of like the Super Bowl media tour. And I think he went on Kay Adams' show and was basically like crying on Kay Adams' show. It's like begging for forgiveness from his teammates and apologizing and all that. So apparently he has rescinded his trade request. He wants to still be there. We'll see what Miami decides to do at that point. But he had 81 catches, 959 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. Decent, but not Tyreek Hill numbers. And we know Tua missed a significant portion of the year. It's Snoop Huntley throwing in the ball at times. So interested to see how Tyreek Hill is viewed by the Dolphins. And if they do decide to move on from him, what does that look like for a 31-year-old wide receiver in the market heading into next year? Then you've got Deebo Samuel, who has requested to be traded from the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco makes the decision to pay Brandon Ayuk last year. Ayuk gets hurt, suffers the ACL injury. Deebo has already been paid by San Francisco. He's not been very good. No. And his stats last year, not great at all. 51 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kind of feels like he's fallen off the cliff a little bit. So there's 2 trade candidates that Barnwell has thrown out there, and Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel. Your thoughts on those 2 and potential movement we could see this offseason in the NFL?
Yeah, so well, to quote my nephew at Thanksgiving. Tyreek Hill this year, from a fantasy perspective, was buns.
Yeah.
Still,
True.
there's a huge difference between those two players to me. I'm buyer beware on Deebo Samuel. I think he's seen his best days, and I think he's gotten banged up a lot. And if you're him, you could say, "Hey, I wish Kyle Shanahan didn't use me as a running back and receiver for a couple years." But I'd be worried. I think Tyreek Hill has plenty left. I think Tyreek Hill. Again, it's a lot of it is health, and so once you get older, you have some injuries. How much harder is it to avoid those injuries? That's obviously a concern. But if he's on the field, Tyreek Hill's still running by everybody in his way. So, that's a really interesting situation because they might be headed for a huge reset there. I mean, if you know what I mean, like, I would try to keep things together and and try to save my job if I'm McDaniel. Now, Fowler here, and I think basically the Bengals are, if they don't get it done, they're going to tag him, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess it was SI reported at first that they're going to use the non-exclusive tag. That'd give the team till July 15th to negotiate a long-term deal. And then if not, he'll play at $26 million, which I'm sure he would be furious about, at $26 million in 2025. Although that's the thing, like, what
where I think he should come in.
I think so too, but
he doesn't.
Yeah, but also the 1 year crap
Right.
got to be old for him, right?
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, you want to get that deal and get your 70 guaranteed or whatever it is, and then now you've gotten yourself paid. But look, I think it makes sense for the Bengals. I mean, Joe Burrow's out there. We talked about this last week, but like Joe Burrow's out there basically calling out ownership, like, and good for him. I mean, the guy hasn't been in the playoffs the last 2 years. He's playing his butt off, and they are a notoriously cheap organization. So, I mean, I'm impressed that they're planning to try to chase Higgins and Hendrickson and keep them all.
Here's an interesting one that I don't think it's going to necessarily affect the Titans, unless they get a certain quarterback, then maybe it would. But Devontae Adams with the Jets, like, he's owed a lot of money next year. Rodgers is gone, so we know that at this point. And I believe he's due, what was it, 35.6 million next year. And you're talking about a guy that's 32 years old. He has 85 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns last year. Those are good numbers, but it's not, the Devontae Adams that we've gotten used to seeing. Now, how much of that was, he played for the Raiders to start the year and they didn't have a quarterback, and then he played for the Jets, who were terrible. I don't know. Can he still be, one of the elite wide receivers in the league? We'll see. But Adams, a potential cut candidate for the Jets as they get their offseason rolling. Barnwell's put Christian Kirk from Jacksonville on this list as well. And then we know Cooper Kupp, the Rams are going to try to move him. And if not, probably going to end up cutting him at that point. So bottom line is, I think there could be a pretty significant amount of pretty well-known wide receivers that could be available this offseason.
Yeah. It seems like these guys we're talking about, I don't know, it seems like from the Titans' perspective, might be a little rich for their blood and just a little bit not the right timing given where they are. But
I would agree.
They badly need receivers. So, I mean, look, if you were able to make it work and get someone to where you now feel like you have 2 big-time playmakers, you're paying both. Paying 2 receivers, that seems like it's something that a team that's like a contender or at least a playoff team does. Although I guess the Bengals are about to pay 2 receivers and they didn't make the playoffs last year.
It's true.
But, like, again, you'd prefer when are you going to get the next young receiver? But if you have an opportunity to get a big-time playmaker there, then now you can check that off the list and focus on other stuff while you draft.
Well, and then, also – you would have to make some of these decisions before the draft comes, so I get that. But what if you can't get the next young receiver? Like, what if you've got a pretty good idea of what you're doing in the draft and you're picking at number 1 and just the receiver's not in the plans based on who's available in the draft right now? Like, you may just have to supplement for a while with paying some of these guys until you can find that next young receiver. Like, in a perfect world, I'm with you. Like, if you could walk away from this draft and feeling pretty good about a receiver that you've selected being a foundational piece of your offense moving forward, that'd be awesome. Whether that's Travis Hunter or Ted McMillan or whoever, but is that going to be realistic for the Titans based on where they're currently picking right now?
Yeah, and I think it didn't work out last year, but remember, I mean, you have to react. You have to have your targets in free agency, and then you react. And like last year, Rand Carthon basically said they wanted Autry and Al-Shaair back.
Yep.
They didn't get them. They lost them, so they used the money on Ridley.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you're out there, you're competing with teams for different guys, and then that helps dictate what you do in the draft. And if it ends up that you can get one of these guys, it's not bad to get good players.
No, absolutely. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll continue to take your thoughts on the wide receivers and who could be available this offseason. Should the Titans be aggressive in pursuing wide receivers this offseason, veteran wide receivers? More your thoughts on that. Plus, could another Stanley be a target for the Tennessee Titans this offseason? We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Tune in today to 94.9 The Fan for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores host Air Force. Pregame beginning at 12:45, first pitch at 1 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Robby and Rexrode sponsored by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. So speaking of free agency, we've talked about some options that could be out there at wide receiver. Plus some more options at wide receiver that we didn't get to that, quite frankly, I have no interest in, i.e. Keenan Allen. So we'll leave that one alone.
Yeah, it's getting a little long
little
in the
late.
tooth there.
A
Yeah.
little late on that one. How about offensive line? We all know the offensive line is a huge problem for the Titans. Has been a huge problem for the Titans for a long time at this point. You've got some hope moving forward that Bill Callahan could be a part of the solution as they continue to churn the offensive line, and he continues to make some personnel decisions there that hopefully get things improved on that front around here. How aggressive should the Titans be in free agency this offseason as it relates to the offensive line? We've talked a lot about Trey Smith. We've gotten a lot of questions about Trey Smith. We'll continue to discuss Trey Smith later this segment. An interesting option that could be out there that I wonder what your thoughts are, Joe, as it relates to the Titans, what the interest level could be, and how good you think this player still is. So Ronnie Stanley, who is not, I don't think, related to me, but Ronnie Stanley, longtime member of the Baltimore Ravens. It's an interesting time right now with him in Baltimore. And there's a piece that Jamison Hensley has put together at ESPN.com. It's kind of going through the decision that Baltimore has here as it relates to Stanley and his next deal here. He's 31 next month. He's missed 36 games over the last 5 years. This year, played in every game. He ranked 12th in the league in pass block win rate among tackles at 92.5%. First time that he's played in every game of a season since I believe he had that bad ankle injury in 2020 that kind of has been messing with him over the last 5 years. So you're talking about a 31-year-old next season that has an injury history, that's missed a lot of games, that also played pretty darn well this past season, protecting Lamar Jackson on the blind side. Now, obviously, like I think he would like to remain in Baltimore. We'll see if Baltimore wants to go that route and commit to him with another contract here. But if he becomes available, should that be an option the Titans should look at, given the fact that they have drafted a left tackle, but Ronnie Stanley could be available?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that I would do all the due diligence on. But again, in the NFL, you tell me 30-something in injury history, and I, like, immediately that means more. That is scarier in this league than in any other league, right?
I would agree.
And so I'd be real hesitant. I'd be frankly kind of afraid to do it, but also I think you have to look into it. He's been a very good player.
Yep.
He is still, I think, a good player when he's available.
Well, he's projected, according to this piece at ESPN.com, projected market value is around $20.7 million per season for a 31-year-old. And really kind of the holdup right now is he took a 50% pay cut last year to remain with Baltimore. And it's like, all right, well, coming off of this year, is he going to do something like that again? Probably not. Now, there is an opportunity in Baltimore to win, and he's been there his entire career. And you're talking about a guy in Lamar Jackson that apparently is continuing to get better, still an ascending player. You know, he had probably his best year this year, and it did not result in an MVP, but he's playing incredible football. So, you know, there's a lot to like if you're him about remaining where you are, having a chance to win, all those things. But if they don't come to a deal, he could be out there. And, you know, this article points out he's widely considered a top 5 free agent in the league if he's able to get there, and the top available left tackle. So if you're the Titans, like, do you consider that given the needs that you have on the offensive line? Now, you've just drafted J.C. Latham, who plays left tackle. So if you got Ronnie Stanley, would you move Latham back to right tackle? Like, how would you view that if you're Bill Callahan and the Titans?
That's the thing. I think you only entertain this if you, I think, would have to have already been thinking about doing that with Latham, right? And I just have no idea. I haven't heard. I guess Callahan left the door open a little bit on that, but I haven't really heard anything that makes me think, that they were seriously considering it. They might be. Maybe Bill Callahan is already like, yeah, JC's a right tackle. And if that's the case, then I think something like this makes more sense. But to just do this when that's probably what you're going to have to do, if you didn't want to do that, if you thought if you still believe that Latham's future as a left tackle is going to be fine, I saw some grade, I don't know what the heck it was, ML Football graded him like a C something, that's C plus maybe as a pick. I mean, that's probably fair, C plus B minus rookie year, but it's certainly not like the type of rookie year that tells you, oh, this is going to be a problem. This is not going to work out. I mean, I feel better about him, quite a bit better about him after his rookie year than I did about Skoronski, for whatever that's worth. But I think that's got to be a huge part of any sort of investigation of a free agent is like this would be, to me, is like, okay, then if that's the plan, it goes perfectly with your plan. Well, all right, then you've paid. You have to pay. You're going to have to pay somewhere seriously to fix the offensive line. Well, this would give you your tackles.
Well, I would be curious to know from a Titans fan perspective, and take off like the Tennessee Vol hat for a second if you're a Vol fan out there. Would you rather the Titans, let's say Ronnie Stanley gets to free agency. Again, he's 31. There's a lot of injury history there, but he does play tackle. Would you rather the Titans pursue him and that be kind of like the big money guy that you go after in free agency on your line? Or would you rather them pay a lot of money to Trey Smith and solidify the interior at guard? Like, it's a tackle and it's a guard. It's two different positions of value in the NFL. Trey Smith's going to make a lot of money. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Like, it's going to be difficult, I think, for Kansas City to retain him. And whether they do or they don't, he's going to make a lot of money based on the way that he's played. I'd be curious to know, like, which way would Titans fans rather see them go in terms of the money they spend?
I personally, again, if internally in that building, if the belief is J.C. Latham's a left tackle, he's going to be fine. That's what he is. Then I think it's absolutely Trey Smith. And I mean, Trey Smith is young. He's really good.
Yep.
He's in the prime. I feel better about paying that player where he is. Obviously, he's all past all the blood clot stuff, which I think was a big part of him falling.
Agreed.
Where he did. I would do that. And then you potentially have 4 spots looking decent. Again, you're a little worried about center, early next year, but you still hope that long-term, Cushenberry should have a lot more left. And then to me, I think you still obviously are adding people. You're going to sign some other like plan B type guys, but then I think the draft is where you hopefully can get your right tackle somewhere. I mean, it might have to be like a 4th rounder, but you can get a serviceable and sometimes good, right tackle at that point in the draft.
I think I would lean Smith as well, just because of the age. Like, to me, the thing that scares me to death about Ronnie Stanley is 31, the amount of games he's missed over the past few years, and committing to that right now. Like, are you in a spot where it makes a ton of sense to commit to that right now and then move Latham after spending an entire year working with him on the left side, moving him back to the right side? Now, he could do that. Like, he played a lot of right tackle. I don't think it would take him a huge amount of time to adjust to playing right tackle again at the NFL. But I get wary about the 31-year-old, particularly at offensive line, who's had a lot of injury issues. Now, good for him. Like, he rebounded last year and he played really well. Like, the numbers are what they are with Ronnie Stanley. So, maybe he's finally gotten past all the injury stuff and he's going to be a really good player for the next 2-3 years that's worthy of the contract that he's going to get paid, whether that's in Baltimore or somewhere else. I mean, Trey Smith's 25. He's 25. And I understand it's a guard. And if I'm choosing a position in general to pay, I would go tackle ahead of guard. But I think the age and the injury history has to be factored in pretty heavily here if you're the Titans or anybody else.
You have 2 guys on rookie deals on the left side. You obviously paid a center. And if you can get another young player that you really like on another rookie deal, yeah, there's absolutely you're still not paying that much for that offensive line.
Right.
You hopefully will come up to tough decisions later because they're good, but there is absolutely it's almost malpractice to not pay somebody. So yes, if that again, part of the plan is like the whole picture is okay. What does right tackle look like in the draft? But if they're able to get Trey Smith, yeah, to me it's absolutely worth paying them. Yeah, it's important to have good guards too. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it does matter. And if they're bad, sometimes it doesn't matter who your tackles are.
I got a lot of thoughts on this. We'll get to it on the text line coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Ronnie Stanley, if he's potentially available. Should the Titans pursue him this offseason? Trey Smith could be out there as well at the guard position. Your thoughts on all that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. A lot of interesting thoughts on the Ronnie Stanley, Trey Smith debate of if you're spending money this offseason at offensive line, where should it come from? Ed on the text line says, wouldn't you want your core positions like offensive line and defensive line to be young at the same time if possible? Aging players won't be around when the team is good again. So why would you pay for that? That's from Ed on the text line. And an interesting question. Joe, your thoughts on that? From
Well,
Ed.
I just wrote back to Ed. I mean, I hear you, and I just said something kind of that effect. But the problem is, like, you just don't know when you're going to be good again. Does anybody think the Titans are going to be like a playoff team next year? I can't right now. I'd sit here and say, what are you smoking?
It's hard to get there.
But also, that's what people would have said about Washington a year ago. What are you smoking? 2 years ago, that's what people would have said about Houston. What are you smoking?
Yep.
Right? Now, what's the commonality with those two? Yeah, they got rookie quarterbacks who are incredible as rookies. But huge jumps and dives happen in this league. So if you did effective team building in tandem with this, then yeah, it's still possible that you would have a good veteran tackle while you are good. You can go from horrible to playoff contention in 1 year in this league. It happens all the time. This franchise did it 9 years ago. I mean, they should have won the division in 2016 after they had gone 5-27 the 2 years before. No one was predicting anything like that. So I hear you. Yes, of course you'd rather have young. And again, on this topic, I mean, I'm really agreeing. Like, I don't think it's some stupid thing to pay a guard just because he's a guard. If he's a good player, a bad guard can make a tackle worse. A good one can make a tackle better. You still have to figure out right tackle. If you give me a more feasible option of a player more in his prime who's a free agent at right tackle, like if somebody was a similar profile to Trey Smith at right tackle and it was more money, but it was similar, like healthy, young, all that, I'll take the tackle. I'm
sure.
with you. I will choose that option. But right now, if we're comparing these two, Trey Smith or Ronnie Stanley, I say as long as you feel good about the possibility in the draft, whether you like it or not, Titans fans, like your team has got to draft at least one offensive lineman this year. You have to. I mean, frankly, just about any team to me somewhere should be getting an offensive lineman just about every year somewhere in the draft. Yeah, I think you have to prioritize right tackle. If you feel good about the prospects, where you are, how that can come down, then yeah, pay Trey Smith.
It's interesting. The text line right now is kind of split in terms of there are some that have no interest in paying an old injured player, and some that say, yeah, you pay the tackle over the guard every time. Like, it's kind of where the text line is right now.
So the old injured tackle over the young healthy guard every time. Okay.
Yeah, look, first off, I'm going to be really interested to see, like, what does Baltimore decide to do here? Because if they let him go, like if they let him get to free agency, is that a red flag? I mean, he is 31, but he just played really good football for them this year. So if they say, yeah, we recognize that, but we're passing anyway, like, how much of a red flag is that? You're talking about a team in Baltimore that is right in the thick of it right now, Joe, for their contention, right? Like, Lamar Jackson is playing the best football of his career. He's one of the best players in the league. Like, your window to win is right now. If they decide to let him go, does that put a bit of a red flag in the Stanley discussion at that point?
Yes, absolutely. Why? If that's the case, they think he's toast. There's no other explanation for it. Because again, then you have to tell me, unless they have the next person, the next guy at that spot on their roster.
Well, they've talked about if it's not going to be him, Roger Rosengarten, who has filled in for them.
Yeah,
he's done pretty well.
He's fine,
right? But he's not Ronnie Stanley at the top of his game.
Right.
Right.
So this tells you they think Ronnie Stanley is way far from the top of his game.
Right.
So I think that's the availability sometimes of a player is what should tell you to stay the heck away from a player.
Yeah, and again, like, look, I've not watched Ronnie Stanley closely enough to know whether or not he's now on the other side of the injury thing. I mean, it's good for him. You know, I do remember the ankle injury he had, and it was bad. And, you know, the piece on ESPN.com that I referenced kind of talked about that and how debilitating that's been for him. But he played in every game this year and played well. So is he finally past it? I don't know. It's the first time. That's the other thing. It's the first time in his career that he's played in every game. Now, in 17 and 18, it was still a 16-game schedule, and he played in 15 of the 16. So, you know, whatever. It's close enough. But this is also the first time at age 30 that he's played a full season in his career, which is also, I think, another at least yellow flag at that point.
Yeah, but also, so you would think the Ravens would be motivated, right? Like,
I mean,
why are you going to mess that up? I mean, their offense was pretty good this year. They got a chance to win a Super Bowl next year. Keith asked, Ronnie Stanley, is there also a Mo Rexrode out there? Yeah, he's a long snapper from UC Santa Cruz Banana Slugs, but I don't know if he's quite a pro prospect.
I mean, I'm all for it. Ronnie Stanley, I feel like he could become a regular on our program.
I think you just like this segment so that you can just say a name that sounds like you as an NFL player.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't blame you. It's pretty cool.
I mean, the similarities are striking between me and Ronnie Stanley.
Power, physicality.
A lot of power out there.
Good feet.
No doubt. Let's head back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Titans Bill to the program. Titans Bill, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning. How are you two doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Well, great. I'll tell you what. Go after T. Higgins. Because, look, he's an in-state person. He played his high school football in Oak Ridge. He played for Callahan when Callahan was offensive coordinator at Cincinnati. And I'll tell you, he would have been a Tennessee Volunteer if Josh Heupel was head coach instead of Butch Jones. Think about that.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Bill.
That is true.
Covered a lot of ground there. Missed opportunity for the Vols and could be available for Titans.
Exactly. I love the home state connections. No, like we were talking about earlier on the show. I mean, it looks like the Bengals are going to tag him. They're going to tag him with the idea of signing him. I mean, like, I guess things could go sideways. Could they tag in a trade?
Sure.
It's possible, but
I'm not trading for T. Higgins.
Nah. So I don't think that's going to be an option. And frankly, good for the Bengals if they actually do this. If they're actually able to keep Higgins, Chase, Hendrickson, well, that's what you should freaking do. I mean, you got this kid at quarterback, and you're going to still mess around and nickel and dime everybody? I mean, you pay people. Like, I understand if you're a Titans fan, you'd love to see T. Higgins. We've also talked about T. Higgins. You know, is T. Higgins, is he really a wide receiver one who's just overshadowed because he happens to play with Jamar Chase, or is he a wide receiver two who looks a little better because he plays with Jamar Chase?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think he's clearly a good player. The other part with T. Higgins, we've just spent a lot of time talking about injuries. I mean, he's been injured a fair amount the last couple of years. That would also throw some concern in that pile for me.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's he had a really good stretch this last year to remind people he's
still pretty
good football player. There's no doubt. But yeah, that's not going to be available to you.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More your thoughts on the Titans and free agency. Also getting into Vanderbilt coming up next. Been a pretty good year for Vanderbilt athletics. How has it happened? How sustainable is it? We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean will be with us later this hour at 7:30. We'll get into a variety of topics with our friend Gentry Estes. He is an open book. You can talk about anything with Gentry. So looking forward to that coming up later this hour.
He wrote about us screaming at each other.
He did.
Not too long
I saw
ago.
that.
Oh, it was Kaharski. Because, of course, he's usually involved with their screaming.
It does tend to happen.
Yeah.
You know, if we brought in Ronnie Stanley, wouldn't have to scream about anything. World would be a better place if he was a member of the Tennessee Titans.
Ronnie Stanley, a weekly segment with Ronnie Stanley and Robby Stanley would be pretty sweet.
See? Hey, let's see what the Titans do, see if we can get something worked out there.
Yep.
On that front. Joe, I don't know if you noticed, but a pretty good year for Vanderbilt athletics. You had a football team that dramatically overachieved. You know, I think the preseason win total for Vanderbilt football was, I believe, 3.5. They ended up with 6. They had the win against Alabama, played really well, and some other games that they could have won. Diego Pavia was electric and one of the most fun players to watch in all of college football. And Clark Lee kind of revitalized his program. He had a program that was lost in the wilderness, and to his credit, he made some changes that worked out really well, and I think you're feeling pretty good about where Vanderbilt football is, and maybe more importantly, where Vanderbilt football is going from here. On the basketball side of things, you've got Mark Byington stepping in year 1 and having his team playing like an NCAA tournament team. They've already beaten Kentucky. They've beaten Tennessee. You know, they hung in there with Auburn, almost beat Tennessee again before it got away from them in the second half over the weekend. And I think Vanderbilt's going to have a good shot to make the NCAA tournament. Now, they're going to need to continue to play well and do some work down the stretch here, but they're going to have a shot to get in the tournament. On the women's side of things, Shea Ralph doing a great job. You have Michaela Blakes, who may be the most, fascinating player in the entire country. She just put up 55 points, a freshman record in D1, and she had 53 in a game earlier this year. So all that to say, there is a pretty good run of success right now for Vanderbilt athletics. And by the way, I didn't even bring up the most successful Vanderbilt program, and that is Vanderbilt baseball, who is getting things started as we speak here. So we know what to expect from Tim Corbin and that crew. We know how good that they always are. Pretty good run right now for Vanderbilt athletics. So, Joe, I guess my question for you is, as you peel it back and you look at it, how has it gotten to this point with Vanderbilt? How sustainable do you think this is? And beyond the sustainability part of it, how much room for growth do you think there is with Vanderbilt athletics and the run of success that they're on right now? That I would argue, Joe, right now, when you factor in football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, right now is probably as good as I can remember it in my lifetime.
No, it's I think it's an underrated and told story and nationally. And I think it's one of those things that people are going to start realizing this soon, because that assumes, programs continuing to progress. But I mean, to me, any college sports success story or failure story almost inevitably the discussion ends up with administration and athletic administration, university administration on or not on the same page. It's a huge part of it. I'll go to Kurt Signetti, and he's part of this story, by the way, of Vanderbilt potentially, but I'll get to that because Vanderbilt might want to be a little bit afraid right now. But Kurt Signetti went to, and obviously you're going from James Madison to Indiana, great, but a lot of coaches would say, why would you're going to a dead-end Big Ten program. But he recognized that they had it at the president level with Pam Whitten and their AD and everything, and they had it. They were going to basically support financially the program, and they're on the same page. Like, it's important to win. You have to do this, 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 and basically it comes down to you have to pay. And Vanderbilt has finally figured out they have a lot of financial might, and they had over the years. Longtime Vanderbilt fans know this. On the board or at the chancellor level or both, you just had obstruction to athletic success. So I start there because Daniel Diermeyer, who has been at Northwestern, has seen athletic success and what it can do for university. He's all in on doing it. But I think the number one factor is that Candace Lee, as an athletic director, Danny White gets a lot of flowers in this state and well deserved. And he has ratcheted up the finances there, and he is very good at finding coaches, and they are winning and making money. Candace Lee deserves way more credit than I think she's getting. I mean, she hired Clark Lee. She made the decision to fire Jerry Stackhouse and hired Mark Byington. She made the decision to fire Stephanie White and hired Shea Ralph. I mean, it's
looking
about
good right
it's
now.
about investment, and then it's about making choices and having a good feel when you're hiring coaches. You're talking about Clark Lee, 43. The conversation about him is a little different now than it was a year ago. And we'll see. That's still a tougher – football is tough, man. But it's exciting with Pavia coming back next year. You got Byington, 48 years old. You got Shea Ralph, 46 years old. Pretty young coaches starting programs. And I think Vanderbilt, both of those basketball programs are going places, man. Now, I'll bring in the Byington real quick. Just watch this Indiana situation because remember, Kurt Signetti and Mark Byington were together at James Madison.
Yep.
Actually, someone reported this weekend that Signetti is pushing for Byington. Signetti then tweeted at that, "No, that's not true. I'm worried about my own team. Thank you very much." But there is a connection, and Byington is like, Shea Ralph, if Gino retires, you worry there. But right now, I have no idea when that's going to happen. So I think you're in good shape for keeping her. Byington, it's only 1 year. It's pretty incredible that they're the quality of team they are with a totally rebuilt roster. I know that has to happen a lot more in college basketball, but guy can coach. It's investment. They have facilities that are good now. It's like all these things have kind of quietly come together. There's been a lot of doubts about it, even on this station.
Yep.
And then you make good choices with coaches, and you're cooking with grease right now. Is that the term?
Cooking with grease. That's it.
There you go.
Look, there were a lot of doubts. I think justifiably. I think there are a lot of doubts with Vanderbilt fans, right? Like a lot of Vanderbilt fans doubted what the investment level was going to look like. And now you're starting to see it, right? Like the facility over there with a new basketball facility is awesome. The football stadium still under construction, but like the Vandy United project, you can see it. Like it's coming together. So you have that. And now you're starting to see, and we're still at the very beginning stages of this, Joe, but you're starting to see some results, right? Like from football. The takedown of Alabama was the pinnacle moment in Vanderbilt football history, right? Like we saw that this year. Now, I get it. Like Alabama did not end up being, a national title contender. I understand that. But at the time, they were the number one team in the country. And you came in and handled them from start to finish in that game. And it was a great scene. People there were going nuts. You took the goalpost down Broadway. Like you saw it and you lived it, and it was awesome. And I think if you're a Vanderbilt fan, and probably equally as important, a Vanderbilt donor, you see that and you're like, well, this is awesome. I want to be a part of that. Basketball part of this. You're starting to see some big wins, right? I mean, you stormed the court after Kentucky. You stormed the court after Tennessee. Like you're seeing some results, which I think when you start to see that, Joe, it becomes infectious from the standpoint of, oh, this is cool. We like this. This is fun. Let's continue to invest so we see more of this. And I think that's been lacking around Vanderbilt for a long time, even with some of the big donors that they've had. And we've talked about this before. Vanderbilt's got a lot of money. Even with some of the big donors that they've had, you haven't had the payoff with the results. And now that you're starting to get that a little bit, I wonder how much that affects it moving forward.
Yeah, I do too. Because, there's, John Ingram. Hey, John, can you write another check? And he's always been a long time, big time supporter. But Vanderbilt they've got people who have some cash and, some cash that they're willing to use. Obviously, they already have. And look, you mentioned Corbin, who is the gray beard at 63 of this coaching roster. I mean, he's like a lot of coaches. I mean, he has an incredible program. I think he has honestly like one of the most impressive college sports programs I've ever seen or heard of, truly. And what they do and how he goes about like looking at it like he's setting people up to have great lives. And so the NIL thing it's an affront to that. And he has been outspoken about it like few coaches have been willing to be. But also, he's adjusted to it because you have to. If you want to keep doing this, understand that like either there's going to be pay for some of these top players or like they're going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's just the reality. And so I think that's been a somewhat reluctant, understandably so, but a pivot to that too. And so I'm really interested to see where that goes. But yeah, like you said, as you have success, how much does that build on itself with these people? Because there are people that just Vanderbilt fans have been conditioned over years to just not think that they're going to invest, not think they're going to be good enough, not think the refs will ever give them the benefit of a call,
Yeah.
Against a good team and so on and so forth. And I feel like there's a shift happening.
So how sustainable is this with Vanderbilt athletics, and how much can you build on it? Like how far can this go if you're Vanderbilt? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on Vanderbilt. Good run of success right now for the athletic department at Vanderbilt. How sustainable is it? How much can they build on it moving forward? And John, I guess that's the question. Like, it's a really good spot that they're in right now. Football has gotten to a bowl game this year. Clark Lee, at least from a perception standpoint, turned that program around dramatically in 1 year. We'll see where things go with that moving forward. We've talked about the basketball part of this, the baseball part of this. How sustainable is it? How much can you build on it? Like, can Vanderbilt football build on what we saw this past year? Can Mark Byington, Shea Ralph, can they get their basketball programs to be in contenders for an SEC title, contenders for, being a team that can make a deep run in an NCAA tournament? How do you view where this thing can now go if Vanderbilt keeps this up here?
Yeah, well, I think both basketball teams are going to be in the NCAA tournament. It's a little trickier with the men. Actually, Michaela Blake's in the 55 points. I think the Vanderbilt one we're probably going to get in anyway, but that was a big deal. They lost 3 in a row. Auburn's a losing team. They're down 15, and she completely bails them out. Again, 30 points from 6 minutes left in regulation to the end of overtime to turn a 15-point deficit to a bad team and a 4th straight loss into a win with the most points of players ever scored in the SEC, most points freshmen ever scored in a game. And so I look at her, and again, when the way college sports is now, you have a great player and you immediately think, I mean, even if you're one of the top programs out there, doesn't mean another blue blood couldn't try to, come get your player. But, Vanderbilt women's basketball with her as a freshman. And by the way, other really good players. Camille Pierre is an excellent player. Ayanna Moore, they've got a good team. You keep coming there, and that's a team that can make runs. Now the men, they're going to have a tough, they're going to have to get a few more wins here in a ridiculous SEC to get in. I like where they are. I think they're good enough. I think they showed it at Knoxville Saturday. Again, like, they're good enough. So, like with Blake's, you have something you build around her moving forward. You're talking about a National Player of the Year type talent. You're talking about she can just get wherever she wants, whenever she wants. You can get by anybody at any time, and she's just a tremendous all-around player. The men, it's a little bit like next year. It's kind of a new roster. I mean, we'll see. And obviously, Byington, like I said, I don't think Indiana's going to hire him. I think Indiana's going to shoot for someone a little more proven, but it's something to keep an eye on. Football, it's just, it's still such a hard league. They can have you can have a good team in the SEC, and you can win 1 or 2 games. I mean, that's just how it is. So it's a great start for sure. And I think the investment thing is there. And so now, do you keep people investing? It seems like this offseason has been pretty good for them. And like a texter said, a huge thing obviously was Clark Lee going out to New Mexico and bringing in not only the QB, but OC and sort of like head coach advisor. And that was a huge part of turning things around. At some point, Pavi is not going to be the quarterback, I think. I mean, maybe there's a lawsuit that keeps him as a quarterback till he's 40. I mean, I don't know.
Could be.
But it's a heck of a start. It's going to be really interesting. The competition is so fierce in the SEC. And obviously a lot of these programs still have advantages over you, They still have better facilities, better stadium. And I don't know. In some cases, certainly more money. Although, again, I think Vanderbilt can compete in that way more than some people might imagine.
I got one texter that says, since NIL has become a thing, Corbin no longer has the significant advantage of being able to offer baseball players full scholarships, which before NIL were few and far between in that sport. I know this is one that gets you fired up. Your thoughts?
Good God, man. Is this Big Joe? Are you trolling me, Big Joe? Yeah. So, again, yeah, that's not accurate. I know that's like a popular thing in the SEC. Corbin! So they've had a need-based aid program. So they've had some players who qualified for need-based aid, which supplemented their scholarship. They are not the only university that has need-based aid. You'd be shocked to find out. Now, did they have an advantage there in some cases? Yes. They were able to give some players more because of the university need-based aid. They did not give full scholarships. They had the same number of athletic scholarships as anybody else. Also, it's like my favorite was like an Auburn coach tweeting about Kumar Rocker picking Vanderbilt and like suggesting it's that. I promise you that he did not qualify for need-based aid. I promise you. Okay. So it doesn't mean anything. But now, yes. Now, whatever advantage he had, and I think, again, with some players who qualified for need-based aid, there was an advantage. Yeah, I mean, now, obviously. I mean, any SEC baseball team now, any of their good players are certainly getting school paid for and then some.
Yes.
But, yes, that's been incredibly exaggerated.
It has. And look, they're in an interesting spot. You know, you talked about kind of the change. And look, NIL has been a factor, right? Like, you know, the hesitancy, I think, from a lot of old school coaches to embrace that and to know that that's the kind of the new way of things and the transfer portal and all those things. Now, you look at Vanderbilt on the baseball front. I think, what are they, 15th right now? I mean, I think they're in the top 15. Problem is, you look at you can make this argument in football, but I think it's basketball has become this way. Baseball has been this way for a long time. Just a lot of really good programs in this conference. And when you add in Texas and Oklahoma, that makes everybody's path a little bit harder, right? Like we talked about that. When Vanderbilt included, it makes your path a little bit harder to be at the top in these sports. The football part of this is interesting to me from the standpoint of, like, I think a lot of things went right for Vanderbilt this year. They had, obviously, you know, going out and getting and bringing in Jerry Kill was a huge move for Clark Lee. The offense, the way that they ran their offense with the personnel that they had, I think was perfect. And we've been talking about, you know, trying to have a little bit different of an offense, the way you run it for a long time. They leaned into that. Clark Lee deserves a lot of credit for all of that. I do wonder, like, next year, you know, they're playing the same schedule. It's the same conference schedule that they just had this past year. Just like everybody else, you're just flipping where you're playing it, which I don't really love, by the way, but that's a conversation for a different day. Like, can they have the same offensive success next year that they had this past year? Or do teams catch on?
That's great. Yeah, that's a great question. An SEC scribe, I know that at one point earlier this year is like, yeah, their little scheme, you know, and then I think they went out and like won at Auburn. And, yeah. So I think if you execute, the thing about it this year is Pavia got hurt. Now I think he's put in harm's way a lot. So it doesn't, you're going to just expect him to be healthy. But if you look at the way he was running the first half of the year, and then when he started going out there on that ankle and playing on it and gutting it out because he's tough, but not as effective. I think a fully healthy Pavia too is makes that offense tougher to deal with. But yeah, it's a fair question for sure. I mean, to me, if you with any scheme, you know, I mean, it's not like, I mean, the scheme has limitations on what it's going to do for you. Can you block? You got guys who can get open. And what is your quarterback doing? I mean, I still think they're going to be pretty successful this year. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, when's the last time? Yeah, I guess, you know, you go back to like Kyle Shermer era with Mason. There was excitement going into some Vanderbilt years, but I feel like this has got to be the most in such a long time, right?
You would think so. The bottom line is, like, I think it's a really exciting time right now to be a Vanderbilt sports fan. And how often have we been able to say that over the last 50 years, right? Like with everything going the way it's going with their programs right now, I think it's a really exciting time to be a Vanderbilt fan. And you should enjoy it. I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, March, you should have both teams playing. It's pretty awesome.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean will be with us coming up next. We got the Rex Rant coming up at 7:45, all that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Gentry Estes from the Tennessean. Gentry, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to be with you guys.
Good to have you with us. Appreciate you taking time to do so. We just had a discussion about Vanderbilt athletics, Gentry. Been a pretty good run this year. The football team overachieving, both men's and women's basketball playing very well right now. We know what Tim Corbin has built with the baseball program. As you look at Vanderbilt athletics, how do you think we've gotten to this point where it's been as successful as it's been, and how sustainable do you think this is with them as they move forward?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the new chancellor, Daniel Diermeyer. And I go back to in 2020, he took over kind of in an extended period that was affected by the pandemic. But I do remember during that stretch when he first took over the job, I remember I wrote something that was like a column that was aimed at him, just basically saying Vanderbilt isn't trying to win. They're not doing everything that's needed to keep up in the SEC and major college sports, and certainly not in football and men's basketball, those kind of sports. And, facility-wise, it was a mess for a long time, as Joe, I believe, has written quite a few times as well over the years. And you could just question how serious competing in the SEC was to Vanderbilt at this point. So you write that. Diermeyer takes the job, and within a few months, he's wanting to have a call to go over this. And he was very clear that he was going to prioritize athletics. He was going to invest in athletics, and he viewed sports as important, that he himself was a sports fan. And over the years, I think a lot of times at Vanderbilt, the fans had gotten disillusioned a little bit. That they would say certain things and not follow through with it in terms of facilities or investment in these programs. And I think there was a real wait and see kind of vibe even when Diermeyer was saying this, and he's done it. He's followed through with it. The last 2 years, certainly Vanderbilt with Vandy United, a lot of the facility upgrades, and now recently the last couple of years with a greater investment in NIL, it's been apparent that they actually do care about winning now, and you're seeing the results.
So let's take baseball out of it, Gentry, because Vanderbilt baseball, I mean, I think Corbin has adjusted. I think they're going to continue to be good, but that's a national championship winning program. But of the two basketballs and football, of those three programs right now, what's the highest ceiling? What's the one that in 5 years from now we could be talking about, okay, this is actually a nationally relevant, contending for big stuff program?
I think either of the basketballs at this point, certainly with Michaela Blake's, I think you're about to see Shea Ralph's program get attention on a national level. I think Joe, you said that you're talking about a player who could be a national player of the year candidate, and I completely agree with that. During the time she's at Vanderbilt, she will be a transformational player for that program. So I would probably say women's basketball at this point. But if the strides that the men's program has made already with Mark Byington is remarkably encouraging. I don't think anybody would have ever looked at the scenario they had this season, having to replace their whole roster, and expected a team that was going to be good enough to beat Tennessee and Kentucky and be competitive in the league the way it has. So if he's able to build on that, then I think, Vanderbilt men's basketball, too often I think people have equated here recently, because both have been struggling. They've equated football with men's basketball. And I think, longtime Vandy fans understand those are not the same things. It is a lot more difficult in football in the SEC than I think it would be for Vanderbilt in men's basketball. There's a lot of built-in advantages Vanderbilt has in men's basketball. Most notably, they have a heck of a home court advantage. And when their fans show up and make it that way, you start seeing some of what you've seen this year.
So, Gentry, on the Tennessee side of things, you've got, obviously, speaking of Vanderbilt, they come back, they get the win against Vanderbilt over the weekend. Zakai Ziegler, when he's on, continues to just be a really fun player to watch. But Tennessee as a whole, how do you view them in terms of the threat that they could be come tournament time?
It's always so tough with Tennessee this time of year, isn't it? Because there's every year it seems with that program, there's a reason to believe, okay, they can do something, but you just question it. And I think Tennessee, I think you saw it against Vanderbilt on Saturday. You saw both versions of Tennessee, a team that was just awful in the first half and then got it together in the second half and dominated to the extent needed to come back and win that game. You know, with Tennessee, I just still believe they don't shoot it well enough. And we've said that just too many times over the years. It seems with some of these really talented, really promising Rick Barnes teams where, you know, when the shot clock's running down and you have to make a shot, who not only is willing to take it, but who can make that shot. And one thing I like so much about last year's team versus some of the others was you had that guy in Dalton Connect, and they're missing that guy right now. Although I tell you, Zakai Ziegler certainly stepped up and did what needed to be done this last weekend in terms of making plays and getting to the free throw line and changing the game. I mean, he has that ability, but it's just the perimeter shooting. It seems to always be the case with Tennessee.
Yeah. No, Ziegler was awesome in the second half, but I'm with you. If they had one more shot maker, I'd feel better about him. All right, we can hit it all with Gentry. So we've been concerned about UC Saros. He did get in yesterday, and they have 14 saved all 14 shots. So I mean, it's good for him to at least have a little positivity from this Four Nations thing. But what's your concern level with just Saros and his future moving forward here, Gentry?
I'm a lot more concerned because he's already been signed to an extension that hasn't even started yet.
Yeah,
I think that's really. I think UC will be a fine player. I don't think he's fallen off a cliff or anything. If you're, to me, yeah, you're concerned about the form this year, but you're concerned about the form of pretty much everybody on that team. I mean, it's just kind of been contagious, and I feel like he was playing well at points, but look, they're going to be paying him for a long time to be an elite goalie in the league, and I think what's concerning is he has not been an elite goalie this year, and the longer this has gone this year, the worse that decision has started to look. To roll with him, let Askarov go to San Jose, so we'll see. What isn't getting a lot of attention here is the younger goalie they did bring in behind him. I think he's played pretty well, and with the way this season has gone, it makes sense to me to give him more of a look and let him get out there a little more and see what you have there. But it'd be a pretty tough situation if you decided that he was going to have a legitimate shot to be your number one and you're paying the other guy as much as you're going to be paying UC for a long time.
Gentry, on the Titans front, of the veteran quarterback options that are out there and that could potentially continue to be out there as more information comes out over the next few weeks here, are there any veterans that really catch your eye in terms of options for the Titans that you would like to see?
Yeah, I expected this question because this has certainly been the talking point. It just seems like with the Titans, it's like every option that comes up, you just find so many reasons not to want to do it, and there just aren't a lot of good ones out there. I'll go with Jared and say the Sam Darnold route is probably the best one as long as you're not giving up the franchise to do it. So he would probably be the one you look at and say, okay, that one would be the most encouraging. But I'm going to throw, my take on this, and having watched a lot of tape here lately of the two quarterbacks that we're talking about in the draft. I like Cam Ward now. I like him better than I thought I would in terms of what I think his NFL potential could be. Now, I think he could be a project, and that, but I do feel like we're probably not considering that anymore. It seems like everybody's already given up on the idea that the Titans would take a quarterback at number one, and maybe so. That may be where they're going with it. But as we get to the combine next week, it's going to be interesting for me to talk and see and be around some of these two quarterbacks to get a better sense for what could be there for that one.
Talking yourself into Cam Ward, just like the Titans might be. See, I think the Titans might talk themselves into it too.
Hey.
I'm a Sanders guy, by the way, just for the record. I'm a Sanders guy. So you've been watching Shitter. Are you same, down, or up from watching him?
I just feel like Cam Ward has more of an upside at that level. I mean, it seems like everyone's scared to make that Patrick Mahomes comparison because it's not fair to him. It's not fair to any quarterback to make that comparison. But when you do see what he's able to do off script and some of what he's able to, I don't know.
He makes some plays that are insane.
I like Cam Ward better than I thought I would. Now, do I think he's a can't miss, surefire number one franchise changing quarterback? No. I mean, I see there are flaws there and everybody sees them, but the guy's got a lot of ability. And I think if you're, to me, he's the best lottery ticket available, but it is just a lottery ticket.
Well, Gentry, I think you've confirmed that Rexrode needs to get his butt up to the NFL Combine next week for his favorite event of the year. I think that's what we've just uncovered here on the program.
Man, I wish, man.
I'm sure you do.
Say hi to Kaharski. By the way, I loved your columns. Taking your daughter to the hockey game, and sorry that it had to be partially inspired by Kaharski and I screaming at each other on the radio. So, good stuff,
100% true. That is exactly what inspired that.
That's awesome.
It's been that kind of run around here.
Gentry, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us today, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Gentry Estes from the Tennessee and our guest on Robby and Rexrode. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
You know, obviously they made some plays. We had a hard time staying in front of them. At the end of the day, I'm just sick and tired of our guys getting smashed down there. Smashed. We'll get ready to play Tennessee. We were incredibly outmanned at the end. At 3-4 guys on the bench in foul trouble. Joke.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joe Rexrode, the floor is yours. I turn things over to you.
All right, before I get to this, Kyle Tucker is a very loyal listener to our program on our station. And every once in a while, he'll text me stuff that like Stilly says. I don't think I can say this on the air. He asked me to ask Gentry about it. I don't think I can do it. So this is great for me to talk this out because I was about to say it, and then I'm like, I don't think I want to say it. He said this about Titans fans and how they feel about Derek Carr.
Okay. I didn't catch any of it yesterday.
I mean, he said it. So if he said it, you think – I'm not going to say it. The kid's driving to school.
I would say if there's
Stilly,
doubt, let's err on the side of caution.
Get a little less phallic, Stilly. That's my request for you. I'm going to get to Stilly later in the program.
Okay.
But today, I'm going to do what I've done before, and we'll do again. And if this has to become a daily thing that I scream about, I think that all of sports media needs to understand how ridiculous this is and like not let it go. The Big Ten and SEC are clown ass, soft, pathetic losers. Okay. How about that? That might've been a little strong. I didn't even explain myself.
I like that.
The Big Ten and SEC make me sick.
Over.
Yeah,
God.
The Big Ten and SEC make me sick. And they really do. Imagine if Jerry Jones, because, you know, we know the NFL is, they share everything. They have the TV deal. Right? Obviously, individual franchises have their own merch and things like that, but they share everything. If you're Jerry Jones, you understand that you bring a lot more to the table than Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
So imagine Jerry Jones saying, guys, I can't try to do. The Dallas Cowboys get a playoff spot every year from now on because the Dallas Cowboys, they're
That's pretty good, Jerry Jones.
You think so? Yeah. I didn't think it was very good. I did it off the cuff. But just imagine Jerry Jones saying that about the Dallas Cowboys. You know, we are the most popular brand in the NFL. You all know that we bring in more money than most of these other franchises, if not all of them. We get a playoff spot every year. I don't care what we do in the field. We get a playoff spot every year. Imagine, as many ridiculous things as Jerry Jones says, what would everybody do? Like, what? Okay, old man, you're off your rocker. The Big Ten SEC are seriously pushing forward with this. They both get 4 automatic bids in this new playoff thing. They're already going to get 4. This is such a reaction, in my opinion. The talk was already there, but this is such a reaction to only 3 getting in this year and all the teams that you're already going to get these. So already you're getting more money from the new playoff. The Big Ten and the SEC are getting 29% of the revenue from this 6-year deal. Okay. The ACC gets 17, the Big 12 gets 15. That's already, to me, ridiculous. But now also you're going to guarantee yourself 4 spots. Both of you, both guaranteed 4 spots.
Well, and by the way,
just be a competitor. Be a freaking competitor instead of being a soft little baby who's going to take your ball and go home if you don't get your way. It's disgusting.
I agree. Also, it's going to get to 16. It's at least getting to 14. The playoffs. It's going to get to 16, I think. You're going to have plenty of teams in the playoff. Like you're going to get 4 or 5 teams in the playoffs.
Guaranteed.
Most years. Now, again, I realize the SEC just had 3. I think most years you're going to get 4 or 5 teams in if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, because most years you have the best teams. It just is what it is.
You've already stacked the deck in your favor. You have more money. You're getting more of this money. You already have more money. You went out and got Texas and Oklahoma. And I'm just talking about the SEC, but the Big Ten is, they're just kind of, okay, Greg, we'll do what you say.
Yeah.
So you've already stacked everything in your favor. 1 year didn't go your way. What happens in the given year in the ACC when, I don't know, Florida State bounces back strong and has a great team. Clemson has a great team, and Bill Belichick's Tar Heels have. So we're going to have a year where, like, a third great team out of that league, it is possible, or out of the Big 12, it is possible, gets screwed because you have this mandate. It's a joke. We already have enough issues and complaints and arguments about the playoff, but you're going to get your way. Just let it play out. I can't tell you how pathetic this is. It's just pathetic. And it's just completely contrary to the idea of competition.
I agree. And it's, I understand, the Big Ten, the SEC, and Greg Sankey, we've had him on our show, and he's talked about this. Like, they are, especially in football, when you look at the upper echelon teams and programs, most of them either reside now in the Big Ten or the SEC, particularly since expansion, right? Like when USC is a part of the freaking Big Ten now, and it's the USC-Rutgers matchup that we've all been looking forward to for a long time across the country. I mean, it just is what it is. But, like, to me, that's further evidence of what you're talking about. Most years, you're going to have that. Like, you're going to get in. Like, you're going to have the majority of the teams being for the Big Ten and the SEC. I just – sometimes I think the self-preservation and the selfishness of trying to get the best for your conference, you totally – miss the forest through the trees of what's good for the sport.
Yes.
And that's what they're doing right now.
100%. Selfishness and greed. That's a big theme in, human history. But in this little corner of the world of college football, just keep, kill off a conference and take out Washington State and Oregon State. Take out big chunks of this country and just completely alienate them and make it so they can't have a seat at the table and see what happens. It is absolutely not seeing the forest through the trees. You're exactly right. If I have to do this every day, I will.
615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans and free agency coming up next. A lot more thoughts to get to on the offensive line front. We ran through some wide receivers earlier. We'll get back into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Mike on the text line says, good rant, Joe. As for the Titans, is there any way they will get new uniforms when the new stadium opens? Am I the only one who's never liked their uniforms? This is from Mike on the text line. You want a hot take? I think the current version of the Titans uniforms are the worst uniforms in the NFL. I think they're awful.
Whoa. So like when they did that unveil on Broadway, when like Vrabel and J-Rob did
Florida Georgia line up there?
Florida Georgia, you were like, oh my God, these are the worst.
Yeah, they're terrible. I hate the font. I don't like the gray on there. I just think they're awful.
I
don't love the blue helmet. I think it's all bad.
I like the navy jersey, light blue pants. I think that's a great combo. Now, I guess the old iteration of the same thing might have been a little better.
I would agree.
But I like that. And I like the Stormtrooper road whites. Yeah. But other than that, I don't really like. Yeah. Okay. The worst in the league.
I think they're awful. Now,
Jaguars are so bad, though.
The Jaguars are bad. I think I've always thought they were awful. I think it's now been highlighted to me, and it makes it worse when they wear the Oilers throwbacks. I'm like, this is what it could be.
Yeah.
And this is what you have. And that's why I think it's made it worse to me.
I would there's a rule in the NFL on how often you can change, like do the full thing like they just did. Yep. You know, I guess it would have been 2018, right? 2018 or 2019, 2018. But I think that leaning in on you're not gonna do the Oilers uniform, right? But like more like that and do that blue as your primary thing.
Color.
I think there's
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and you can have your logo, but do that blue. I'm with you.
I think Seattle stinks.
Do you?
More so than the Titans.
I like the
throwback is a lot better.
I like their throwback. I like their old uniforms. I mean, the worst uniform in the league to me is the Denver Broncos, and they used to have some of the best.
Well, their throwbacks are among the probably top 3 best.
Yeah, and also a team that got markedly worse for some stupid reasons. The Eagles, the old Kelly Green Eagles uniforms are amazing, and the new ones like whatever. So it's an interesting conversation. Also on the text side, I want to get real quick to Mike from PA on the Big Ten SEC says, you know, just the Big Ten and SEC should leave and do their own thing. I mean, we're kind of getting to that, but just imagine how ridiculous that'd be.
Well, I said this in the break. Like, I would love for when my team wins a national championship, it to be an actual national championship and not just a, hey, congratulations, you won the Big Ten SEC showdown there.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Exactly. It's possible for a team in the Big 12 to have a great football team that could win it all. The ACC to win it all. There are other parts of the country and other programs that invest a lot in football and could win a national championship. But no, I mean, like I said, the AFC has better quarterbacks. Just leave the NFC. Just have an AFC championship because you're the better conference. How about the West in the NBA? Screw the East. Just have a West NBA championship.
It's not the first time I've heard that. Like, that's been thrown out there that they should do that and they should just make their own thing, the Big Ten and the SEC. I would hate it. I just,
it's horrible.
First off, I hate a lot of things about what's going on in college football right now. We've talked about that. Like, to me, it's gotten so far away from what it used to be that sometimes it's hard to think about where it used to be and where it is now. Some of it's good. Like, I like the fact the players are getting paid. They probably should have been paid a long time ago. Don't love the playoffs. Talked about that. But, like, at some point, you got to draw a line in the sand, right? Like, you can't just continue to rip apart the fabric of the seams of the sport and not expect at some point for that to have a negative effect on your fan base and the repercussions that go with that.
At some point, a small group of suits getting as rich as they can while they can off it, everything else, everybody else be damned, should be stopped.
I would agree.
Because that's what's happening.
I would agree. So I don't think this is going to be the last time you ran about that. Like, we could have more.
We could
more
make
news
this
on
the perma rant if you want. Just daily. Rip on the Big Ten and SEC. It's nice to have them together and hate them both. A lot of times people get all, they get territorial with that. It's like, no, both of you together. You
Just
suck.
Wait until this playoff expands to 16 and I flip this table that's screwed in and around here. It's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
On the free agent front, we've gone through some options with the Titans and what could be out there in the NFL this offseason. Now, the wide receiver market is going to be interesting. We talked about some trade candidates that Bill Barnwell from ESPN threw out there earlier, be that a Tyreek Hill in Miami or a Deebo Samuel who has requested a trade in San Francisco. I'm going to be interested to see what happens with those two guys. Deebo, to me, it's been interesting. Like, he's fallen off a cliff in terms of his production. And, the way they used him a few years ago was, he's basically, he's wide receiver, but he ran the ball. They jet sweeps all the time to him. Like, he was an offensive weapon. PM, as TD calls Travis Hunter. He was a playmaker. That's what he was. And it feels like that's kind of gone by the wayside with him over the last couple of years here. I'm interested to see what the availability looks like for him if San Francisco actually trades him and what the interest level looks like. Cut candidates, Devontae Adams. I don't think this is really the offseason for the Titans to look at wide receiver and say, we're going to spend a ton of money. But we've talked about having to fix your receiving core one way or the other. If you get to the draft or you're looking ahead at your draft plans, if you're the Titans and you say, you know what, we're sticking and picking at number one. Maybe they're like Gentry and they love Cam Ward. It's like, we love Cam Ward, but we're picking at number one. We got a second round pick that we probably in a perfect world really need to spend on a right tackle or an edge rusher. So where do we find receiver help? Well, we got to go pay somebody. So in that scenario, I guess I'm okay with it. The question is, who would that be? Like, who are you throwing money at this offseason? A lot of people are going to say T. Higgins. It looks like he's going to be tagged by Cincinnati. Some of the other free agent options, be that a Brandon Cooks or a Keenan Allen. Like, a lot of these guys are old on the other side of things. Stephon Diggs is coming off the ACL. What's that? Is he going to end up back in Houston? Does he get released and become a free agent that way? If so, what does he have left? Buffalo got rid of Stephon Diggs and they seem to be better for it. So I don't know. Like, there's not a ton of great options out there in terms of age and fit in free agency as it relates to money to throw at a wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm of the mind. I've been of the mind, and we've talked about it. Get that young receiver. It's get that young this, get that young that. Build your roster through the draft and develop, et cetera, et cetera. But this year, you're not going to be able to get all of that. You have no choice but to try to be competitive next year. You have no choice. I mean, Brian Callahan has no choice but to try to win next year and keep his job.
That's it. If he wants to have his job, yep.
So I'm not opposed to. I mean, you have to spend in free agency. Another thing we've talked about, like, you have to get difference makers, playmakers in free agency. You have to spend money. You don't have to be in a contention window to go improve your team in free agency. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to stink. So, look, if you can address that position and then, knock it down the list a little bit, although I still would draft a good receiver if I had a chance. If your big board comes up receiver in the, in the second round, okay. Even if you sign someone, I mean, like, you have to, I think you have to go with the big board, go with the best player. But if it's close, then you could, okay, now you can go get the tackle, and so you can get the, you got to get a safety. We never talk about safety, but man, like, they seriously have to start addressing that position. It's not just a nothing position. Offensive guard is in a nothing position. Just because you're not a premium position doesn't mean you're not an important position. Oh, it's to say, though, look, if some of this were to work out, I mean, Cooper Kupp is interesting, but to me, it's like Deebo and Cooper Kupp are in the same sort of category, whereas we've seen their best day. Their best was really good. Their best was high level.
Yep.
But I don't think we're going to see anything close to that moving forward. So who out there can you get who actually still has a lot left to give?
Yeah, that's the question. And I mean, the thing with Deebo is he's 29, so he's not that old.
He's not ancient,
but the production has fallen off with him. So
the injuries have increased.
Well, again, like, are you trading for Deebo? Like, I don't think the Titans right now are in a position where they need to really trade for anybody, unless you're solving quarterback. That's probably the one caveat I would give there is if you're giving up assets that you feel like can solve quarterback, that's fine. Other than that, like, you have so many holes on your roster, you need to be recouping assets. You need to be getting those back, not trading those away. So, like, I don't really love the idea of trading for one of these guys at wide receiver. Now, and then the question becomes, let's say some of these guys break free, whether that's an Adams, Barnwell put Christian Kirk as a cut candidate from Jacksonville. Let's say one of those guys breaks free. Okay, how much are you willing to pay them for them to consider what I like to call the Titans tax of, well, those guys aren't very good, and I'm going to go there and play football? Like, I'm sure Devontae Adams wants a chance to win. I don't know the Tennessee Titans are going to be high on his list, right? So, like, how much are you willing to pay one of these guys for them to consider coming to play for your football team, given the state it's in right now?
Yeah, you have to pay more. You will have to absolutely pay more. And yeah, with someone like that, to me, it would have to be like, oh God, I can't ignore this more.
I don't even think he's realistic unless like Rodgers was your quarterback, and even then, I think it would be a long shot.
I'm just big on, like you said, spend money for sure, and understand you're gonna have to spend more. Well, if you're not, I mean, this is a big off season to me for not just like the new front office or whatever, the refigured front office, berserker, but also just the, like, is Amy, are they spending on a good football team? They better, I'm sorry that like you're paying more people to not work for you, but yeah, you just got Vrabel off the books. So spend money, don't spend draft capital. It's because your long-term future, to be able to have a great team in 2027, for example, when your new stadium opens, it's only going to be, I mean, it's largely going to be built on drafting well and resuming drafting well. You can't trade away draft capital.
Well, and speaking of spending money, the offensive line, an area where that could be an option for the Titans this offseason. How aggressive should they be? And who are some options that could come in and play on the offensive line should the Titans pursue them this offseason? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Nashville's best deal this week from Bavarian Beer House, located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to thegamenashville.com/deals. Get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on free agency and the Titans. We went through the Ronnie Stanley situation earlier, not to be confused with myself, the left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. So Stanley is 31. He'll be 31 next month. And he just played in every game for Baltimore this year, which is the first time in his career that he's appeared in every game. Now, he played in 15 out of 16 for a couple years in 17 and 18. But suffered a bad ankle injury in 2020. He's missed 36 games over the past 5 years, but he was 12th in pass block win rate among tackles this year. He played every game for the first time. And the thought is, if he makes it to free agency, he's going to be the top tackle available on the market. So we've thrown it out there. Like, should a Ronnie Stanley become available in free agency? A lot of people expect Trey Smith to be available from Kansas City in free agency at the guard position. How aggressive should the Titans be at spending money on the offensive line and trying to address their offensive line this way? Now, Joe, we know they've spent a lot of draft capital on the offensive line, whether it's Latham or Skoronski or Nicholas Petit-Frere, or obviously players that have not worked out in Isaiah Wilson, Dylan Radins, who, by the way, is scheduled to become a free agent as well. We'll see what the Titans' decision looks like on him. There's been a lot of draft capital spent on the offensive line over the past 5 years here. I would expect there's going to be more draft capital spent this year on it to some capacity, whether that's second round, they traded back and pick up more picks and pick an offensive lineman in the third round. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. How aggressive do you believe the Titans should be in spending money on the offensive line this offseason? And how do you view the Ronnie Stanley part of this, the Trey Smith part of this, and how you would best allocate that money if you're the Tennessee Titans?
Well, if you're giving me a choice between those two guys available as free agents, I'm going to go Trey Smith. And I know some people will say guard to that, but Trey Smith is a young, healthy player. JC in Goodlettsville, I think, texted earlier about the blood clots. Obviously, that was a big part of his story at Tennessee. I mean, as far as I know, obviously, I guess if someone has something like that, you don't know what might happen in the future. But as far as I know, he's all clear and all good and all fine.
Yes.
So I don't think that's a deterrent. And he's been a very good player for them, an incredible value where they drafted him. Well, the Titans should have drafted him before that. And I think that if they're going to spend, and look, I do think that they're going to have to, if they're going to fix this offensive line, they're going to have to spend some money in free agents. There's no doubt. I would opt for Trey Smith. As we talked about a little earlier, and you brought it up, I think you put it well. It's like Ronnie Stanley has had his ups and downs. He's a very good player. He was key for them this year. 31 injury history. Why are they okay with him going to market?
Right.
Sometimes I guess, sometimes it does work out for the team that a player goes to market. It isn't what they hoped, and then they end up coming back. And so that could happen. But I do think that's a bit of a red flag. And I just also with him, I think you only really seriously entertain Stanley, not you, the other Ronnie, not Robby, but you seriously only entertain that. I think if you are already resolved that you're moving Latham to the other side, maybe they are. I don't know, but there hasn't been much indication of that. And I didn't think J.C. Latham's rookie year was one where you're like, oh, he's got to go back to the right side. I think he looked like a rookie at times, and he probably would have looked just as much like a rookie on the right side, right?
Yeah, I thought Latham had some moments at left tackle this year where you could see it, where it's like, yeah, like he's got a chance to be a really good player. I thought as the year went on, which is, I guess, something you got to get to the bottom of if you're Bill Callahan. I thought it got worse as the year went on. Like I thought toward the end of the year, it became more of a struggle for him. Now, how much of that was the quote unquote rookie wall that we hear about all the time? How much of that was just the situation of the team and everything kind of caving in around him when you're the worst team in the NFL? I don't know. Like, I still have hope that J.C. Latham is going to be a good left tackle in the league. Now, you drafted him to be a foundational piece of your team. So I said it earlier in the offseason. One of the things that I'm going to be looking for this year, if he's playing left tackle, if we don't walk away at the end of next season saying to ourselves, yeah, J.C. Latham is going to be a great player here for a long time, to me, that's a tremendous disappointment. The rookie year is one thing. When you get through year 2, you need to be able to say that guy is going to be a great player for you for a long time at that spot. And if you're not saying that at the end of next year, to me, that's a huge problem. Now, if you're Bill Callahan and you're Brian Callahan and you're looking at it right now, did you see anything throughout the course of the year where you're second guessing him being a left tackle? I don't know the answer to that. You know, we've had people ask us that of could they move him back to right tackle? Like, to me, the way you do that, Joe, and you move him back to right tackle is if you find an option at left tackle that you can't pass up. Is Ronnie Stanley at 31 the option that you can't pass up at left tackle? I don't know that I would say that.
No. And the thing is, if that's the option you take, okay, so Latham moves to the right side. So in theory, you've addressed that. But now you're looking, again, very high in the draft probably, because that's really the only place you get long-term left tackles, to draft a left tackle in 2 years.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to do? Now, I had a little back and forth on the text line, and I forgot your name. I'm sorry. Earlier in the show about, the idea that, well, you can't do this because, you're not going to be good. I would argue that you're trying to be good right now. So you sign good football players, you pay money, and you get what you pay for to a large extent. And your window, your playoff window should never be considered closed. Never in this league. It's built for the playoff windows to never be completely closed. So you try to get good. But yeah, the idea that now this foundational piece, as you said, not that right tackle is like significantly less important than left tackle, but if you have a right-hand quarterback, it's a little more important to protect the blind side. Left tackles cost more, go higher in the draft, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're going to be back in that position real soon.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the flip side of this. Are you comfortable given the amount of money that we think it's going to take, which is probably somewhere in the $20 million range per year? Are you comfortable giving that to Trey Smith at that position at guard?
I am.
I mean, he's 25. There's been good durability there. We mentioned the blood clot issues. It doesn't feel like that's a thing anymore. We know he's a really good player. Are you comfortable addressing that position with that amount of money? Now, if you do that, Joe, let's say that's the big move they make on the offensive line. You've got a left tackle under a rookie contract, a left guard under a rookie contract, decent money that you're paying to a center who we'll see when he actually becomes available and able to play next year, and then a mystery at right tackle. Who knows? Like, is it coming in the draft? Do you sign a couple like patchwork pieces of free agency at right tackle later in the offseason? But the bottom line is you're paying basically one big piece. Like, Cushenberry's making decent money, but one big piece on the offensive line at that point. I'm okay with that, even if it's not a left tackle or a right tackle. And then the hope is a couple years down the road, Latham and Skoronski, I guess, too, have played so well that you've got to think about, all right, well, we're getting ready to have to pay both of these guys. How much money are we comfortable allocating to the offensive line at that point?
You just really hope you have that problem, man. You need to get to the point where you got some guys like, oh, we need to give this guy a second deal. It's been slim pickings on that front for this franchise. Andrew says, I literally want to puke thinking about having to draft a lineman at this point. I get it. But, there's
I do too.
There are 5 linemen on the field at a time, right? So, I mean, it's kind of a constant maintenance thing, even if you have a good line. Matt from Camden says, do you pay money for a guard and draft a right tackle in the second round, or do you spend money at right tackle and draft a guard in the 4th round? I feel like that's a big question. That's an interesting way to think about it, because I do think that if you go the Trey Smith route and all of a sudden you feel like you got a real chance to be solid to better at 4 spots, then I think that second round pick could end up making sense there. And I know some people then would want to puke, but it's, what do we just watch, guys? It's a line of scrimmage game.
Well, the bottom line is job one for Borgonzi and Brinker and this staff right now is finding the quarterback, right? Like, you've got to get the quarterback position figured out. To me, not too far behind that is it's been 3 consecutive years of abysmal offensive line play. Now, I realize that this staff has only been there for one of those years, but it's been 3 consecutive years where we've looked around and said, good Lord, can anybody block on this team? You have to fix that. And I understand there's a long list of other things they've got to fix. They do have to find a young receiver. They do need to find another edge rusher. They got a lot of work to do. But I am so tired of getting through a football season and on a Monday after a Titans game, us getting in here and saying, hey, did you see the quarterback running for his life yesterday? It would be great to fix that at some point. It's been 3 years of that nonsense.
You should not have a weekly debate of, were all those sacks more on the lineman or the quarterback? That's
Right.
like one of the biggest debates of the fall. Whose fault was it really for all these sacks? How about just not have all these sacks?
Yeah. Well, and again, like this is part of why you brought in Bill Callahan, right? Like I realize he is the coach's father, so there's that. But he's also a Hall of Fame level offensive line coach, one of the greatest offensive line coaches in the history of the game. And, fairly or unfairly, the payoff for that did not really come in year 1. It needs to come in year 2. Like there needs to be a noticeable, tangible uptick in performance from that group under his leadership.
Right. Latham, Skoronski, you hope they're key pieces. And Bill Callahan is got to be the guy who makes them key pieces.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More your thoughts on Titans free agency. Plus, do we have an apology coming up from Joe Rexrode next?
I guess.
Oh, boy. I'm looking forward to that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away, a 4-pack of tickets to the Nashville Celebrity Comic-Con at the Nashville Fairgrounds coming up on March the 1st and March the 2nd. Be caller number 5, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a 4-pack of tickets to the Nashville Celebrity Comic-Con at the Nashville Fairgrounds coming up March 1st and March 2nd. No word yet on if Joe Rexrode will be participating in the Celebrity Comic-Con.
I'd always wanted to do a Comic-Con. I think that'd be cool. Maybe so. Hey, Indy Ben is weighed in.
Okay.
He said Titans should just take Will Campbell at number 1 overall. It's the most Titans thing to do. Crying face emoji. Oh, Indy Ben.
Indy Ben must not have
you
liked our
so
Colts conversation
badly
yesterday.
need the Titans' misery, don't you, Indy Ben? You've got a little bit of your own, buddy.
There's a lot to go around in this division.
There is a lot to go around. Comparing, well, I'm going to go to whatever Stilly said yesterday. I'm not going to go there. Speaking of Stilly.
Joe, do you have an apology you'd like to issue?
Yeah, no, I do. It's amazing, actually. That I just went through the comments on our cap casualty thing at The Athletic. Everybody picked a player from each team that could be a cap casualty. That's the salary cap, which exists, by the way. So yesterday, driving home, I get a little text from Stilly. This is in our little thread with me, you, Stilly, and Caroline Fenton.
Only 2 people ever talk in that thread are you and Stilly.
Yeah,
Yes.
you guys just sit there, and it's like you're watching I can't turn away from the car accident. But Stilly takes me to task for my choice for the Titans for cap casualty was Traylon Burks. And so just full disclosure here, let me raise my hand. And it's amazing because I just went through the comments of the story and no one has called me out on the story. I misread it. And like in my mind, they were saving $4.6 million by cutting him. But as Stilly astutely and accurately points out, that's this. And I even wrote it out and still like just completely. I mean, I do this every year.
Yeah.
And I promise you my other cap casualties have made sense and would actually be cap savings. So like I understand how to read overthecap.com. Okay. But I just rushed and basically instead of a $4.6 million savings, it's a $0 savings. Now, I will say, so I apologize to readers.
Yeah, the Titans should really cut Traylon Burks to save him a lot of money.
So still, it's a fair call. Now, of course, he's trying to take it to the cap guy. You're saying the salary cap is real. Like, no, this is not. No, there's no argument of the salary cap being real or not. You have a fantasy world that we're not going to all live in with you.
By the way, that's the most popular topic of conversation on this group thread with me, you, Stilly, and Caroline Fenton.
It's always like, the cap's real, and yet Patrick Mahomes is still on the Chiefs. Explain that, Joe. It's like, okay, man, we're not going to live in your fantasy world. But this was a dumb mistake by me. And yes, I will argue, though, the $0 savings is still worth cutting.
I would agree.
But I think that we should do this exercise for real, which is who is the most likely Titans cap casualty to save them money on the salary cap, which does exist, is real, and influences every single roster in this league every year, and it is seen at the mid-level player level. Obviously, teams keep their stars. So I'm going to come with, actually, Karski mentioned it last week. I mean, I think Harold Landry, in all seriousness, is it's a really interesting offseason in that regard.
Yep.
Now, they have nobody on the edge. So it's hard for me to imagine. And he's been such a pro. He's still a very good player. I don't think they're going to do this, but he's got a cap hit of $24 million. He's got dead money of 13 by my math, which I did poorly with Traylon Burks. It's really amazing how I did that. That's about 11 million in save. It's a big dead number, but it's you're saving 11 by cutting him. Other possibilities to throw out there at you. I mean, Nicholas Petit-Frere, I mean, maybe this is like too much of a no-brainer, but he's 3.6 on the cap hit. He's $240K on the dead money. I mean, I think that's probably a no-brainer. Maybe that's too obvious. Not as. There was another one.
Let me throw one at you.
Okay.
I realize fully that they got a lot of work to do at this position. What about Amani Hooker?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think it's
He's got $11.3 million cap hit. If you
Yep.
cut him, you're saving 8.8 against the cap.
yep.
Now you've got to totally revamp your safety position at that point. And look, Hooker, I think he's a good player. I would not say he's a great player. I think he's a good player. Would that be on your radar for the Titans?
Yeah, it's the thing. Like with Hooker and Landry, you're talking about obviously guys who were part of the past era, who were really good players in that past era, who are still good players, and at positions where you have nothing. So my inclination would be, you keep paying them. You pay Hooker his 11.3 cap hit this year, and Landry 24, and you try to build around them because you already are so strapped for talent. But if it's in tandem with, see, the thing is, if you're doing something like this, then you have to have corresponding moves of paying other players. You have to. So then the question becomes, okay, so then what's your plan if you're going to come? But, I think that's a fair one to bring up. Another one, I wouldn't do it because it's not like it's a big number. I mean, Chig only is getting 3.5, but you basically would save all that money. It's just, again, he's a guy who you'd like to see bump down the depth chart there, but you just don't have much of a depth chart there.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with this roster is, you can look at all these places and it's like, okay, then who's playing at that spot if you do that move?
Well, even a guy like Kenneth Murray, right, who's got a $10.1 million cap hit.
That's a good one to bring up.
You'd save 7.6 if you moved on. I thought Kenneth Murray had moments where he's pretty good for the Titans this past year. And again, like, you got money to spend already. Like, who's playing some of these positions if you move on? The Landry part of it is really interesting to me because, we know that Harold Landry has been a good player around here for a long time. I think even though you look at the sack number itself, and it ended up being a decent year for Harold Landry from that standpoint last year, when you're just going purely off sack numbers, it's 9 sacks. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at. But I think you would agree, and I think if you're a Titans fan that watched intently the games this year, you would agree, his impact on the game seemed like it diminished this year pretty significantly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, it's going the wrong way, but and that you're removed enough from the knee, it's like, it's probably just another case of an aging player, and that's what happens in this league. Also, though, I do think his track record of durability and of just being a solid player, you're overpaying probably for what you're getting from him. But again, like, how do you field a competitive team if you don't have some of that?
Yeah.
Everybody overpays some people. Trevor says, they come away with Abdul Carter, then Harold Landry, higher percentage. Yeah, but I wouldn't mind Abdul Carter learning how to be a pro from Harold Landry and them being on opposite sides of each other and seeing if you can manufacture some pass rush. How much does that help Harold Landry if Abdul Carter is what some people think he is?
Well, I think one thing
he'd love to play a year like that.
Harold Landry, first off, would say, 9 sacks is still 9 sacks. I got it this year, and I suppose a down year. And I think the other thing that he would probably say would be, okay, well, how much help am I getting rushing the passer right now? Like, Jeffrey Simmons is a really good player that occupies attention, but Jeffrey Simmons is not going to end up, with 12 sacks or anything like that on a yearly basis. Devondre Sweat, as much as you like a lot of what he brought to the table in his rookie year, he did not impact the quarterback. Arden Key is not, an upper echelon pass rusher. So if I'm Harold Landry, I'm saying, go get me another pass rusher on the other side and see what that does for me to open some things up.
Yeah, no question. Someone asked about a Woozy, cap number 14.2, dead money 12.5. It's not much. I mean, you need him and you need L'Jarius Sneed to be players who actually play football for you next season.
Yeah,
that would be nice and interesting to see what it would look like, because if they can actually play, I think they might still be able to play well.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Your thoughts on some potential cap casualties for the Titans, your thoughts on NFL free agency. More of that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Make sure you tune in for Smashville Live. It's been moved from tomorrow due to the inclement weather, so they'll be back at it when the Predators are back at home. That date will be rescheduled. So if you're planning on going to Smashville Live tomorrow, it has been canceled. The snow is coming in. Rexrode's going to take up all the bread and milk after the program ends.
Right to the store after this. Right to the store. You guys better hurry.
Trevor on the text line saying, does the new front office approach Landry about a possible pay cut since he's declining? I know Landry probably would not be interested in taking less pay. What do you think of that?
Wouldn't be shocked. That's the other part of this. There's always the in-between of, the cut or just status quo and going to someone and talking about a pay cut. So, yeah, I think that's definitely possible.
I'm interested to see how they view that position in general. Like, it's one thing if you're taking Abdul Carter with your first pick, whether that's at number 1 overall or if you trade back down to 3 or 4 and he's there and you take him. Like, it's one thing to bring him in. If you don't get Abdul Carter, and let's say they draft Cam Ward. They draft Cam Ward. They've got the quarterback. We've talked about their need on the offensive line and a wide receiver. What do you do? Like, how does that impact your decision with Landry? Like, if you get through the draft and you're not really able to find that edge rusher to go help him. Like, to me, that would almost force you to keep him, right? Because he's really the only thing you got. Like, no disrespect to Arden Key, but he's really like the one guy you've got at edge rusher right now. Like, I think you've got to, before you make a decision on Landry, to me, like, you've got to see how the draft kind of plays out here for you, I think.
Yeah. And obviously you go through everything, you still should have a plan in mind. I would want Landry on my football team because he really is, like, he's been a quiet guy, but he is as much probably like a lead by example guy as you can have out there, right? For what he's done in his career. So I think, if you're going to talk about culture, if you care about culture, then Landry to me is definitely a culture player. So there is value in that beyond his production. But yeah, I think, depending how things work out, you could think differently about him. I just feel like, first of all, I'd like to see what he can do with actual help and what it would mean.
Yeah.
What if he has actual help, and what if Tavondre Sweat does become more of a force this year? All of a sudden you have like a young edge rusher and you got more push inside. Let's say Jeffrey Simmons takes another step and doesn't keep declining. Then all of a sudden you feel better. You can do your job a lot better if you're Harold Landry. And again, like you said, otherwise, like, how do you even have enough there? Even if you do, like, how much can you do to have enough if you don't have Landry?
The thing is, everybody's going to focus in on Abdul Carter, and I get it. Like, he's, I think, certainly the best prospect in terms of edge rusher in this draft. I do think, we talked about this early in the offseason, I think you can find some pretty good edge rushers in this draft.
Yep.
And, James Pierce isn't the only one, but, Kennard out of South Carolina, the 2 Ohio State guys that are coming out. Like, I think you've got a chance if you could pick up a 3rd-round pick, or if you could pick up another 2nd-round pick by moving back, you could find some edge rushers that aren't just Abdul Carter or James Pierce in the 1st round.
Yeah, and that's, what you hope too is, like, do some, Jackson Dart and Tyler Shugg and whoever, do some of these quarterbacks start to creep into the low end of the 1st round, which we see sometimes, and then you push some of those guys down a little bit, and all of a sudden at your 2nd-round pick, you get someone who maybe was projected late first, because it's deeper at edge definitely than a lot of positions.
Well, and one place that it doesn't seem to be very deep at all is offensive line. Like, they've talked about, this is not a great offensive line draft. So then it gets into the old discussion that it seems like we have every year on the program about, like, how much does need influence your pick? Like, I think you operate with your big board and you do that to the point where you're not reaching, but there is a point where I think need comes in. Like, if it's relatively close, are the Titans more inclined with their 2nd-round pick to go offensive line just because they think that you had a better chance at finding an edge rusher a little bit later in the draft than you do an offensive lineman. Like, how does that factor in to what they do come draft time?
Yeah, and then obviously it'll be easier. The need will be more defined based on free agency.
Yep.
So, but the really important thing is that next week people start jogging around in Indianapolis,
Well,
and you know,
I can't wait to hear the reports about it.
I know. I could tell when we had Gentry on earlier, like his excitement was palpable.
He was. By the way, Kuharski's weighed in on our personal text line.
Oh,
He says, does help give Landry burst? Talking about the Landry part of this. Like, if he gets help, is that all of a sudden going to make him a faster player, more explosive? And also says that you're naive and the stores have been empty for 2 days with the snow coming in.
oh crap, that's not good. I should have figured. Well, my plan for 9 loaves of bread today and 4 gallons of milk is probably out the door. Well, no, it doesn't.
Did you see how many eggs Rexrode's walking out with in the store? Crazy.
I mean, we are just going to have a French toast festival over at my house. Does help give Landry burst? No. But again, then who? So let me ask him a question. So then who's playing edge if he's not here? I mean, like, I understand that, you know, last week he's like, yeah, like 7 of his sacks were fake anyway. They don't really count. Like, well, you know, he got 9 sacks. I agree with you, both of you, that he did not impact the game like he has previously. But it is a little bit of, okay, then how bad do you want to be there? I think he can be solid for you. And I do think that if you got someone who starts occupying multiple blockers consistently, I bet you that gets a play or two made by him that wouldn't have been previous.
Well, I think the big thing is, if you're going to cut him, where else are you using the money? That's what it comes down to. Like, if you're wanting to save the almost $11 million with the cap hit this year, well, then where are you allocating that money? Because, like, if you're doing it just to do it, like, I'm not for that based on where they're at with their roster right now. Like, it would be one thing if you're looking at your window and you're saying, you know what, we're a championship contender. We just feel like we can replace Harold Landry. We can save money, go out, spend it, and we're one guy away there. That's one thing. Like, but where are you spending your money if you're saving this? Would be where Borgonzi and Brinker would have to get their heads together and figure that out. Like, I don't think you should cut Landry just for the sake of cutting him right now.
No, yeah. So I guess we come around on, he was the first one mentioned during this thing, and now I'm totally against it. So I apologize again. Who is our cap cut then?
Traylon Burks, who saves you
hey,
$0.
You don't lose money. That's kind of a savings, right?
Check it out, theathletic.com. Traylon Burks, the cap casualty for the Tennessee Titans.
It actually says on the side, it says 0 on that thing. It says savings 0.
Rexrode.
Nice job by me.
That does it for us today. Kuharski will be with us on the program tomorrow. Keep your heads about you today with the weather coming in. We'll see what that looks like. Jason Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3.